the moment. 5-4 in the third and deciding set of the men's final at the BNP Paribas Open, Indian Wells 2018, between Roger Federer and Juan Martín del Potro. Roger Federer to serve for the championship, having just broken del Potro. Well, that was the moment, wasn't it? Roger Federer bouncing the ball, about to serve for the championship. And then, despite a double fault that was disappointing, Federer serves himself up into 2 match and championship points. 40-15. With an ace, he did it. He got to 40-15 with a beautiful ace. 40-15, double championship point. That's the moment. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. It was an amazing moment, and it proves, for those of you who are a little upset about the Federer loss ultimately, it does prove that this thing could have gone either way. I want to talk about what happens next from double championship point, of course. I also want to talk about my own personal response to the match yesterday and how I sort of dealt with it. I was going to post a video last night, but I ended up not doing so for a number of reasons. One of which is that I just sort of needed to gather my thoughts. But I also want to talk about how I feel today, which is great. I feel a lot better. I feel happier. I feel optimistic. I'm so confident we're going to have a great year of tennis. I know that in order to win, Federer needs to lose. I know that he really needs to have a loss every now and again to kind of reproduce for him that motivation that he needs. He didn't quite have the motivation yesterday. I think that when you put aside all of the careful analysis of the shots, that del Potro won because he simply wanted it more. He was hungrier for this title than Roger Federer was, having won 27 Masters 1000 titles in his career. Well, this is del Potro's first Masters 1000 title, and he was a little hungrier for it. And the reason, I guess, could be clear just on the face of it by the fact that, again, he's never won. He's due a Master. He deserves, and he deserved it yesterday. But I do think there's so much to be happy about. So we have reason to celebrate as well, and that's what the final point that I want to make today. But first, let me remind you to subscribe to the channel to get essential tennis commentary. We got some great tournaments that are coming up. Novak Djokovic just landed in Miami yesterday and is getting an early start on the courts out there. So he's a 6-time champion, and as his coach, Andre Agassi, is a 6-time champion as well, I'm pretty sure. And so they're the kings of Miami in a way. But Del Po is the king of the desert. Del Po is the king of the desert, but Roger is probably not done with him. Subscribe to the channel because we're going to be talking about all these issues. Give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see and hear. But I do think, folks, that there is a lot to be happy about. Listen, I was feeling strange. I had an emotional response. I get sort of bound up in Roger's success just as many of you do, although I do try to be objective, and I do remind myself that I just love all the great players, and that's the truth. I love the game of tennis, and the game of tennis does transcend Roger Federer. I do think that people tend to get that confused, and I think that there are people out there for whom Federer transcends tennis, such that when Federer loses, it can be really devastating and it can impact their love of the game of tennis, and maybe they're not interested in tennis anymore. I saw one comment the other day, which is a legitimate and valid comment to the extent that, he said something like, tennis is not interesting without Roger Federer. Roger Federer is a special player, and he does sort of have our hearts in a way that really none of the other players do. he has captured the hearts and minds of much of the world in a way. And again, the other players have not been able to do that necessarily. And for whatever reason, I mean, part of it has to do with Roger's play and his achievements and all of that, and his style on the court. Part of it has to do with just how long he's been around. I had a couple of comments the other day talking about how, in the Coric match, the crowd was, not really being too nice to Coric. And I'm sure Del Potro did have a few fans there, and they were yelling for him in the final. But again, probably the balance of the crowd was for Roger Federer. So he does get that advantage. I mean, but he's earned it. That's the thing. You got to earn the respect of these crowds. This Coric guy, well, he's just been around for a couple of years. Roger Federer's been around for basically 20 years, and it is a sight to behold to watch him play. He is a living legend, but the crowds like him for a number of reasons, and the other players, to be honest, in my mind, they have to earn the respect of those crowds. Well, Delpo is the king of the desert, and he is one step toward getting the respect of the crowds. And he's a fighter. He will probably produce some pretty good results this year in some other tournaments. And for all I know, we are in a phase of, Delpo rising. He seems very committed right now. We'll see what he can produce in Miami. But listen, when I woke up this morning, I felt like there's so much to be grateful for with respect to Federer's performance. After all, there he was again at a Masters 1000 final, fighting it out until the last round with every ounce of energy that he had. I mean, he did let that tiebreak in the final set against Del Potro kind of get away from him very quickly, and it just he lost it pretty early in that tiebreak. But so it all really does come down to 5-4 in the third set, doesn't it? And then what happens with those championship points? Well, Federer wastes them both. He misses a first serve on the next point, and then Delpo gives him a very nice winner in the subsequent rally. Delpo was playing relaxed, and so he wasn't taking too many risks in this game, but he was hitting the ball precisely with a lot of penetration, and his ground strokes looked tremendous in this match. He mixed it up in all kinds of ways, including the slice backhand, which was working better for him. The next point, we're at 40-30. The next point, we have that infamous Federer drop shot error. He makes another one later, basically. Then we're back at deuce, and in the course of a deuce cycle, Federer gets another championship point, which he loses. And then, of course, and that was based on another terrible drop shot that he lost that championship point. There was also that point where Federer ultimately won the point. They were both up at the net, and Juan Martín was up there in sort of unfortunate circumstances, and Federer drilled the ball back at Del Potro's body. It hit Del Potro in the leg. Del Potro did kind of a dramatic thing and glared back at Federer. That contributed to the sort of on-court drama. Both Federer and Delpo were having little disputes with the umpire. And that was in the previous set, but there was a very intense energy on the court, and the players were expressing it in some sort of uncharacteristic ways for Federer anyway. But then, Federer hits another mishit, and Delpo slams a forehand home to take the break and even it up at 5-5. And that was sort of the end of the match. And so that's kind of a picture of what happened in the match in a way. I mean, you have this strange intermingling of terrible Federer errors with some very, very strong play from Juan Martín. And, of course, Federer did also give us some great play, some classic Federer shots from both wings at the net to some degree. And so there was a bit of that as well, or they wouldn't have been in a tiebreak in the final set if Federer hadn't been producing some goods during this match. But in general, Juan Martín wanted this more, folks. That's what it comes down to. But the larger point is this. Federer was in another 1,000 level final. He fought his way to the end of that. In the course of getting to that final, he had retained his #1 position, so he's still world #1. He had virtually single-handedly slayed the cream of the crop in the next gen, both Chung and Coric. The Coric match was hard, and basically the Coric match is one of those last two matches where Roger was a bit out of sorts. He was still out of sorts yesterday. It's hard to determine what exactly happened. But then the final point is that also during this tournament, Roger gave his most winning performance in the season in terms of his winning record so far this season. So now he's had his most winning season in his entire career at 36. He's still the world #1. He fought Del Potro to the last in this match and gave Del Potro a real run for his money. I think Roger just didn't have the edge. As soon as he wants a title a little more, maybe he'll want Miami a little more after this. And that goes to the final point that, listen, he needs to lose in order to win. It's so true. And in tennis, of course, all the players lose. There is no player that does not ultimately lose. So I was reminding you guys, giving you guys a dose of that realism a couple of weeks ago. And the reality is that everyone loses in tennis. And the Federer is not an exception to that. He's had a great run this year. He's having a great year. And he's going to give us more wins, many more wins. I promise you that. There's going to be, moreover, so much great tennis this year. And the thing with Del Potro I like, too, because it might be a growing rivalry that they had. I mean, listen, this result is no surprise, right? Del Potro has beaten Federer before. That happened just last year. So it does happen. Del Pot is able to kind of push Federer's buttons in some interesting ways and to edge him sometimes. So Federer, as one commenter stated, and I think it's sort of true based on the errors, he kind of did give a gift to Del Potro here. But on the other hand, you see from that snapshot in that game, Roger's service game at 5-4, when he has those championship points, you see it's actually a combination of the Roger errors and actually some very strong play from Del Potro. So we need to give credit to Del Potro, without question. We need to be happy that Roger has done so well again, that is proving himself to be, again, the top player, basically by getting to this final. And then by getting to 40-15 with 2 championship points. I mean, folks, if you disregard what happened in the following, 10, 15 minutes, this is such an achievement at 40-15, at 5-4 in the third. He had the championship. The championship might as well be his. That's basically what he believes, I think. He rolls with the punches. He's okay with this. He thinks Del Potro deserved it, and Federer is right. I agree with Federer in that regard. But we might just have an emerging rivalry between Del Pot and Federer that could get very interesting. And we have, without question, some great tennis coming up. Novak Djokovic is not quite done with the game yet, and he seems to be quite committed to working himself back into form. So we'll be keeping an eye on him, notwithstanding the little egg in my face that I had before. But we're also keeping an eye on a few others. We do have these next-gen people, Coric in particular, who proved to be something of an unexpected threat to the Federer game. But again, Roger was lacking something in these last 2 games. So let me finally just sort of pose the question. What happened with Roger? It was the last 2 matches, as far as I can tell. For the rest of the tournament, he was basically okay. It was the Roger that I know. But let me ask you, just what happened to Roger in those last 2 matches? If I may say so, just by observing it, it looks like he might have been eating a little too much cheesecake over the course of the past couple of weeks. It's just a little bit of a belly starting to grow on him. It's kind of like Jack Sock I was watching the other day. He seems to be getting a little too heavy out there. Well, we want Federer lean and mean. He needs to be lean and mean. And then, of course, with the unshaven face, I think something was going on. He might have contracted some kind of illness. I think there's going to be news coming out about that. But he doesn't want to take the glory away from Del Potro right now. So the truth about what happened to Federer is probably going to come out a little bit later, because Federer is kind of a gentleman. He's a wonderful and great gentleman in this regard. And he wants to make sure that Del Potro is able to soak this up and able to enjoy it all, as Federer has done 27 times at the Masters 1000 level. So much to celebrate for Fed fans, so much great tennis on the horizon, so much to congratulate Juan Martín del Potro for. So let's celebrate. We don't need wigs to celebrate. Woo-hoo! But some of you don't like my falsettos, I know that. We got so much more great tennis talk coming this week. So much to celebrate in professional tennis. And Roger Federer has so much to celebrate. Come on! Woo! Celebrate good time, come on! Talk soon!